I took the wrong elevator. That's how it started. Not with fate, not with some grand collision of worlds. Just me, Caleb Monroe, 22 years old, fresh out of a state school with a business degree and approximately $40 in my bank account, stepping into the wrong elevator on my first day at Voss Industries, and ending up on the executive floor like an absolute idiot. The doors opened and I walked out before I even looked up from my phone. When I did look up, I knew immediately. This was not the 12th floor. This was not where the interns sat in rows like nervous little sardines waiting to be evaluated. This floor was silent. Marble. Floor-to-ceiling glass looking out over the whole city. The air even smelled different up here, like money and leather and something I couldn't name. I spun around to catch the elevator, but the doors had already closed. "You're lost." The voice hit me before I saw him. Low, flat, not a question. I turned slowly, and there he was, standing by the window with a coffee cup in one hand and a phone in the other, looking at me the way you'd look at a pigeon that somehow made it into a five-star restaurant. Mildly annoyed, vaguely amused, completely unbothered. Ethan Voss. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew his face. Everyone knew his face. It was on the company website, the lobby wall, the welcome packet they handed us this morning. Son of Chairman Richard Voss. 28 years old, acting VP of Operations. The man who was supposedly being groomed to take over the entire Voss empire before he turned 30. In the photos he looked sharp, polished, corporate. In person he was something else entirely. Tall, broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit like it was made for him specifically, which it probably was. Dark hair pushed back, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and eyes that were doing something deeply uncomfortable. They were looking at me like I was a problem he hadn't decided how to solve yet. Yeah, wrong floor, sorry. I jabbed the elevator button. I'm an intern, 12th floor. Monroe. I froze. How do you know my name? He lifted his phone slightly. Your photo is in the intern file. I reviewed all 12 of you this morning. I blinked. You personally reviewed the intern files? I personally review everything in this building. He sipped his coffee without looking away from me. You graduated top of your class at Harwell State. Full ride scholarship. No connections. No family in the industry. My jaw tightened. He was saying it casually, but the subtext was loud. You don't belong here. Is there a problem with that? I asked. Something shifted in his expression. Barely. Just a flicker at the corner of his mouth. Not yet, he said. The elevator dinged behind me. I stepped in without another word, keeping my face neutral until the doors closed completely. Then I exhaled so hard my whole body deflated. My hands were actually shaking. Not from fear, I told myself. From irritation. From the sheer audacity of a man who looked at a stranger like he already owned the room they were standing in. I smoothed my tie, straightened my jacket, and reminded myself why I was here. 12-week internship, competitive evaluation at the end. Top performer gets a full-time offer. I needed that offer. I needed it more than anyone else on that floor because I had nobody to fall back on. No safety net, no last name that opened doors. Just me and everything I'd worked for. When the doors opened on 12, I walked out with my head straight. I had exactly one goal. Get through this internship, get the offer, and stay completely off the radar of anyone above the 20th floor. I repeated it like a promise. Stay off his radar. I had absolutely no idea that by the end of the week, Ethan Voss would already know the sound of my voice when I was trying not to react to him, and that he liked it. I found my desk on the 12th floor and tried to disappear into it. That was my strategy. Head down, work hard, don't make enemies, don't make friends who would later become enemies. And under absolutely no circumstances think about the man on the 35th floor with the cold eyes and the audacity to know my GPA before I'd even signed my first timesheet. It worked for exactly 4 days. On the 5th day, my supervisor Linda called me into her office with an expression that sat somewhere between apologetic and deeply uncomfortable. She was a small woman in her 50s with reading glasses, perpetually pushed up on her forehead and the energy of someone who had survived multiple corporate restructurings by being aggressively invisible. I respected her immediately. Caleb, she said, folding her hands on her desk. There's been a change to your rotation. What kind of change? She cleared her throat. Mr. Voss has requested a dedicated intern for a special project he's running out of the executive floor. Quarterly performance analysis across 3 departments. It's intensive, detailed work, and he specifically— She paused. Requested you. The room went very quiet. Me, I repeated. You. Ethan Voss requested me specifically. He sent the email himself. She slid a printed copy across the desk like evidence. Sure enough, there it was. Clean, direct, zero pleasantries. Assign Monroe to the Q3 analysis project. Starting Monday. E. Voss. 4 words with my last name in them, and somehow it felt like a verdict. Can I decline? I asked. Linda looked at me over her, glasses with the expression of a woman who had seen younger people make career-ending decisions before and was watching another one approach the cliff in real time. Technically, she said carefully, yes. But he is the chairman's son, Caleb. I took the paper. Monday came fast. I showed up on the 35th floor at 8:58 with a laptop, a notebook, and a carefully constructed internal monologue about professionalism and emotional regulation. His assistant, a composed woman named Diana, who looked like she'd seen everything and was impressed by nothing, led me to a glass-walled conference room adjacent to Ethan's office. The project files were already loaded on a secondary laptop waiting at the far end of the table. I sat down, opened the files, got to work. For 40 minutes, nothing happened. Just me, the numbers, and the quiet hum of the building. I started to relax. Maybe this was fine. Maybe he'd assigned me here and forgotten about me entirely. Maybe I'd do my work in peace and— You hold your pen wrong. I looked up. Ethan was standing in the doorway of the conference room, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbows, holding a tablet. He wasn't looking at the tablet. He was looking at my hand. Excuse me? Your pen. He walked in without being invited and sat down across from me, completely at ease. You hold it too far back. It slows your writing. I stared at him. I wasn't aware my handwriting was part of the performance analysis. It's not. He set the tablet down and leaned back in his chair, studying me the way someone studied a document they were deciding whether to sign. I'm just observant. So I've noticed. Something flickered in his eyes. Not offense, closer to interest. Walk me through what you have so far, he said. So I did. I pulled up the data, walked him through my preliminary findings, flagged 2 inconsistencies in the Department 3 numbers that didn't align with the previous quarter. I kept my voice steady, my tone professional, my eyes on the screen. He didn't interrupt. Didn't check his phone, just watched me talk with that same unreadable expression. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. You caught something my last 3 analysts missed, he said finally. The numbers were right there. Yes, he said. They were. He stood, picked up his tablet. Same time tomorrow, Monroe. He was almost at the door when he stopped. And Caleb? It was the first time he'd used my first name. Something about the way it sat in his mouth made my stomach do something. I immediately filed under irrelevant. Good work, he said. Then he was gone. I sat there for a full 10 seconds before I exhaled. He was dangerous. Not in any way I could explain to HR or write in a formal complaint. Just quietly, deliberately dangerous. In the way that certain people are when they make you feel seen without your permission. I closed my laptop and made myself a second promise. Do not let him know it's working. It became a routine. Every morning, 8:58, 35th floor. Diana would nod at me like I was now part of the furniture. I'd settle into the conference room, open the files, and work. Ethan would appear somewhere between 9:30 and 10, sleeves already rolled up, coffee in hand, and we'd go through whatever I'd found since the day before. He was sharp. Uncomfortably sharp. The kind of sharp that made you want to bring your absolute best just so he couldn't. Find a reason to look at you, like you were wasting his time. I brought my best every single day, and every single day he'd find one thing, just one, to push back on. Not aggressively, not cruelly, just a quiet, precise observation that made me go back and look harder, made me think deeper. I hated how much I was learning from him. I hated more that he seemed to know it. By the second week, the project had expanded. 3 departments became 5. The timeline tightened. Linda sent me a sympathetic email that essentially said, I'm sorry, good luck, I can't help you. I started staying late. The first night I stayed past 7, I thought I'd be alone up there. The floor had emptied out, Diana had gone home. The city lights were coming on outside the glass walls, and I was sitting cross-legged on my chair like a complete professional, jacket off, tie loosened, talking quietly to myself as I worked through a formula that refused to cooperate. "You're still here." I spun around so fast I nearly knocked my laptop off the table. Ethan was standing in the doorway of the conference room. He'd lost the jacket too, top button of his shirt undone. He looked. I stopped that thought immediately and professionally deleted it. "The Department 4 numbers aren't reconciling," I said. "I'm not leaving until I figure out why." He looked at me for a moment. Then he walked in, pulled out the chair directly beside me instead of across the table, and sat down. I felt my whole body become extremely aware of the distance between us, which was approximately not enough. "Show me," he said. "I have it, I just need—" "Monroe," his voice was quiet. "Show me." I turned the laptop toward him. He leaned in, eyes scanning the spreadsheet, one arm resting on the table close enough that I could see the watch on his wrist. Expensive, simple, the kind of thing that didn't need to announce itself. "There," he said after 90 seconds. He pointed at a cell in the third column. "The depreciation formula is pulling from the wrong fiscal year. Someone entered the data correctly but built the formula wrong. It's been compounding the error across every subsequent column." I stared at the screen. Then I saw it. Obvious, embarrassingly obvious once someone pointed at it. "I would have found that," I muttered. "I know," he said. "You were 3 steps away." I glanced at him sideways. That almost sounded like a compliment. "Don't push it." But the corner of his mouth moved. Just barely. I was starting to learn that was as close to a smile as Ethan Voss got in a professional setting. We worked side by side for another hour. It was strange how quickly the strangeness faded. He worked in silence mostly, only speaking to ask something specific or point something out. I matched his energy, kept my focus on the screen. At 8:47, he closed his laptop and stood. "Go home, Caleb. I have 2 more sections. They'll be there tomorrow." He picked up his jacket from the chair. "You're no good to the project exhausted." I looked up at him. "Do you actually care about my well-being or just the project output?" He held my gaze for a beat too long. "Go home," he repeated. I started packing up my bag, mostly to give my hand something to do. He was pulling his jacket on when he said it, casually, like it was nothing. "You smell like coffee and ambition, Monroe." "It's distracting." The air left the room. I turned slowly. He was already walking toward his office. Jacket straight, posture perfect, completely unbothered. "That's incredibly inappropriate," I said to his back. "I know," he said without turning around. His office door closed. I stood there in the empty conference room, bag half packed. Heart doing something loud and inconvenient against my ribs. Distracting. He said I was distracting. Ethan Voss, who reviewed intern files personally, who caught formula errors in 90 seconds, who hadn't smiled fully in the 2 weeks. I'd known him, told me I was distracting him. I finished packing my bag, rode the elevator down alone, walked out into the cool night air and told myself firmly, clearly, with great conviction, that I was not going to think about that on the commute home. I thought about it the entire commute home. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. I know it was a Thursday because I remember thinking that morning that I only had to survive 2 more days before the weekend, and I could spend 48 hours not thinking about Ethan Voss and his unreasonable jawline and the way he said my name, like it was a decision he'd made. I was not surviving well. 3 weeks into the project, and I had developed what I could only describe as a deeply inconvenient awareness of him. The way he moved through a room like he owned the air in it. The way he listened, completely still, eyes focused, like whatever you were saying was the only thing happening in the world. The way he'd started sitting closer during our morning sessions without either of us acknowledging it. 2 weeks ago, there had been a full table between us. Now there were approximately 16 inches. I had not brought this up. I was not going to bring this up. I was a professional with goals and a $40 bank account history and absolutely no business developing feelings for the man who could end my career with a single email to Linda. So, Thursday, I was in the conference room at 7:30 that morning, earlier than usual, trying to get ahead of the workload so I could leave at a normal human hour for once. The floor was empty. Dawn was still bleeding orange across the city skyline outside the glass. I had coffee, silence, and a plan. What I did not have was a working laptop. The system froze at 7:45 and spent 20 minutes pretending to restart before delivering me a blue, Error screen with the energy of someone who had simply given up. I stared at it. It stared back. I gathered the laptop and went looking for IT support, which meant going to the small server room at the end of the executive corridor. I'd been there once before with Diana to pull a physical report file. I knew the door code. What I did not know was that the automatic lock had been flagged for maintenance that morning and would engage itself without warning. I found this out approximately 4 minutes after I walked in, when the door clicked behind me and the handle refused to turn. I stood very still. Then I tried the handle again. Then I tried it 6 more times with increasing urgency. Then I took out my phone and discovered I had no signal inside the server room because, of course, the one room in this building lined with enough equipment to block. A cell tower was the one I'd locked myself in. I sat down on the floor with my broken laptop and my coffee and my rapidly deteriorating sense of professionalism and waited. 35 minutes later, the door opened. Ethan stood on the other side, his expression doing the thing where it stayed completely neutral, but his eyes said several things at once. He looked down at me on the floor, then at the broken laptop, then back at me. The IT log flagged an inactive access card in here, he said. The door locked automatically. I'm aware. Maintenance flagged it this morning. He leaned against the door frame. You didn't get the building notice? I'm an intern. I don't get building notices, apparently. Something crossed his face that might have been guilt if Ethan Voss was capable of guilt. He stepped back to let me out. I stood, gathered my things, with as much dignity as a person could gather after sitting on a server room floor for 35 minutes, and walked past him into the corridor. Thank you, I said tightly. Caleb. I stopped. He was looking at me differently. Not the evaluating look, not the sharp professional assessment. Something quieter. Something that made the corridor feel suddenly smaller. Are you all right? He asked. Just that, simple, but his voice had dropped slightly, and there was something genuine in it that I hadn't heard from him before, like the corporate layer had peeled back just 1 inch. I'm fine, I said. A little humiliated, but fine. He walked toward me slowly. Stopped close. Closer than 16 inches. Close enough that I had to make a conscious decision about where to look. I looked at his collar. Professional. Safe. You don't embarrass easily, he said. I've noticed. Is that in my file too? No. His voice was quiet. That one I figured out myself. I finally looked up at him. That was my mistake. Because he was already looking at me with an expression I had no framework for. Open, steady, and wanting something it hadn't decided to ask for yet. My back met the wall behind me. I hadn't realized I'd stepped back. He hadn't stepped forward. He was simply close, one hand rising slowly to rest flat against the wall beside my head, not caging me, not pushing. Just there. You've been careful around me, he said. You're my superior. That's not why. My jaw tightened. Ethan, you feel it, he said simply. I know you do because I feel it too, and I've spent 3 weeks trying to decide what to do about it. The corridor was completely empty. The city glittered behind the glass. My heart was loud enough I was genuinely concerned he could hear it. You could do nothing about it, I said. That's an option. It is, he agreed. He looked at my mouth for exactly 1 second. Then back up. I'm not interested in that option. This is... I know what it is. His eyes held mine. I know every reason this is complicated. I've listed them. I've weighed them. His thumb brushed the wall just beside my shoulder. And then you walk in every morning at 8:58, and I stopped caring about the list. The silence stretched between us, warm and dangerous and full of something neither of us had named yet. I'm not a prize, I said quietly. Just because you want something doesn't mean... You think I see you as a prize? Something shifted in his face. Caleb, I see you as the only person in this building who pushes back when I'm wrong, who catches what everyone else misses, who sat on a server room floor for 35 minutes and came out still holding their coffee. His voice dropped lower. I don't want to own you. I want to know you. There's a difference. I searched his face for the angle, for the calculation, for the Ethan Voss who reviewed intern files and said, not yet, like everything was a test. I found something else instead. He was telling the truth. This changes things, I said softly. Everything, he agreed. He didn't kiss me. He just stayed close, his hand sliding from the wall to the edge of my jaw, tilting my face up slightly, his thumb tracing one slow line across my cheekbone, like he was learning the shape of me. "Have dinner with me," he said. "Not here. Not as your superior. Just as a man who has been extraordinarily distracted for 3 weeks. Despite everything, despite every sensible thought in my head, I felt the corner of my mouth pull up. "You admitted to being distracted," I said. "Don't make it weird." And there it was. The first real smile I'd ever seen on Ethan Voss. Small, reluctant, almost surprised at itself. It absolutely wrecked me. "Dinner," I said. "One dinner." His thumb traced my cheek one more time before his hand dropped. "Friday," he said, like it was already decided. Like he'd already made the reservation. He probably had. He straightened his jacket, turned and walked back toward his office like the last 5 minutes hadn't rearranged something fundamental in both our lives. At his door, he paused. "And Caleb?" He didn't turn around. "Get your laptop to IT before 9. I need the department 5 numbers by noon." I laughed before I could stop it. Short, disbelieving, he disappeared into his office. I stood in the corridor for a moment, back still against the wall, coffee still in my hand, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Friday, I thought. I was absolutely not surviving until Friday. Friday came anyway. Despite my best efforts to slow time through sheer anxiety, I changed 4 times, which I refused to feel embarrassed about because anyone who claimed they wouldn't change 4 times before dinner with Ethan Voss was either lying or had never seen the man in a fitted charcoal suit. I settled on dark trousers, a deep burgundy shirt, and the one pair of shoes I owned that didn't scream I bought these on clearance. He'd texted me the address at exactly 6 p.m., no preamble, no looking forward to it. Just an address and a time. Very Ethan. The restaurant was not what I expected. I'd braced myself for somewhere aggressively expensive, somewhere with no prices. On the menu and waiters who looked at your shoes to decide how much water to pour you. Instead, it was small. Warm lighting, dark wood, maybe 15 tables. The kind of place that was expensive, in a quiet way that didn't need to perform itself. He was already there when I arrived. No suit, dark jeans, a black shirt, collar open. He looked up when I walked in and something in his expression settled. Like he'd been waiting and was relieved the wait was over. That look alone nearly ended me before I even sat down. "You're exactly on time," he said. "You seem surprised." "I'm not." He stood briefly as I sat, which was so effortlessly old-fashioned, I didn't know what to do with it. "I had you figured for punctual. Is that in the file?" That one I knew from day one. He settled back in his chair, relaxed in a way I'd never seen him at the office. The sharp corporate edges were still there, but softer, like a door left slightly open. "You were the only intern who arrived. Before the orientation technically started, I was nervous," I admitted. "I know, you kept straightening your badge." I stared at him. "You saw me in the lobby?" "I was passing through." He picked up the menu with the ease of someone who'd been here before. "You didn't see me." "You watched me fidget in the lobby and didn't say anything?" "You looked like you were having a private moment," he said simply. I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't know what to do with that either. With the idea of Ethan Voss, chairman's son, acting VP, standing somewhere in a lobby, watching a nervous kid from a state school straighten his badge and choosing to leave him his dignity. "Why did you request me?" I asked. "For the project. Specifically me." He set the menu down, looked at me directly the way he always did, like eye contact was a language he was fluent in. "Your application essay," he said. I blinked. "What?" "Every intern submits one. Most of them write about ambition, 5-year plans, industry disruption." He paused. "You wrote about your mother." My chest tightened. "You wrote about watching her work 2 jobs for 11 years, so you could go to university," he continued, voice quiet. "You wrote that you weren't there to build a career. You were there to build. Something that meant she'd never have to work 2 jobs again." He held my gaze. "I read 12 essays that morning. I only remember 1. The restaurant noise softened around us. I felt suddenly exposed in a way that had nothing to do with proximity or almost kisses in corridors. This was different. He'd seen something real before I'd even walked through the door. "That's why you reviewed the files personally," I said slowly. "It wasn't routine." "No," he admitted. "My father's been pushing me to take on an apprentice, someone to develop properly over time. I was looking for the right person, and you chose the intern with no connections and $40 to his name." He almost smiled. I chose the intern who knew exactly why he was there. He leaned forward slightly. There's a difference between people who want success and people who need it. The ones who need it work differently, see differently. His eyes stayed on mine. You see everything, Caleb. You just pretend you don't. The food arrived, we ate, we talked, really talked, in a way that had nothing to do with spreadsheets or quarterly figures. He told me about growing up inside a company, how his name opened every door and made every room complicated, how people looked at him and saw the inheritance before they saw the person, how exhausting it was to never be sure which one they actually wanted to know. I told him about shared apartments and scholarship deadlines and calling my mother every Sunday regardless of how tired I was, because she worried and she'd earned the right to be reassured. He listened to every word with that complete stillness of his. No phone, no distraction, just present in a way that felt almost unfamiliar coming from someone who had every reason to be somewhere more important. By the time dessert came, I'd stopped being nervous. Somewhere between the main course and the second glass of water, I'd forgotten to maintain the careful professional distance I'd arrived with. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You've relaxed, he said. You're less terrifying outside the office. Only less. Don't push it, I said, echoing his own words back at him. This time he smiled fully, unhurried and genuine, the kind that reached his eyes and changed his whole face and made him look his actual age instead of some ageless corporate entity. It was devastating. I wanted to study it. I wanted to make it happen again. After dinner, we walked. The city was cool and loud around us, people moving in every direction, lights bleeding across the wet pavement from an earlier rain. We walked close without discussing it, shoulders occasionally touching, neither of us pulling away. At the corner where my subway entrance dropped down into the ground, he stopped. I stopped too. He turned toward me, the city noise muffling everything to a low hum around us. His eyes moved across my face slowly, landing finally on mine. I meant what I said in the corridor, he said quietly. I'm not interested in simple. I'm not interested in temporary. His jaw tightened, slightly like saying, vulnerable things cost him something. I've spent a long time being exactly what this company needs me to be. I haven't spent much time figuring out what I need. And? I asked softly. His hand came up, slow, deliberate, fingers curving around the side of my neck, warm against the cool air, his thumb resting just below my jaw. And then you walked off the wrong elevator looking like, you'd rather be anywhere else, he said. And something in me just settled. My breath came out uneven. Ethan, I know what I want. Caleb, his voice was low, certain, stripped of every corporate layer. I want someone who pushes back, who stays late not because I asked, but because the work matters to them, who makes me feel like a person, in a room instead of a name on a building. His thumb traced my jaw. I want you. Not the intern, not the project resource, you. The city moved around us indifferently. I searched his face one last time for the calculation I'd always expected from him, and found none, just this. Just him standing on a wet corner in the cold, holding my face like I was something he'd been careful with from the beginning. One condition, I said. His eyes sharpened. Name it. When I make VP someday, I said, and I will, it's because I earned it. Not because of this. Something blazed through his expression. Respect, fierce and immediate. I wouldn't have it any other way, he said. I'd be disappointed otherwise. I closed the distance. The kiss was quiet at first. His hand stayed at my jaw, steady, the other coming to rest at my waist, pulling me in without urgency, like we had time now, like this was the beginning of something with actual length to it. I felt him exhale against my mouth like he'd been holding something for weeks and finally set it down. When we pulled back, his forehead dropped to mine. Mine, he said softly. Not a demand, not a declaration, just a word that sounded like relief. I let out a short breath of laughter. Incredibly arrogant. Incredibly accurate, he corrected. I pulled back just enough to look at him. The city lights caught the angles of his face. He was watching me with that quiet, settled expression. The one I now understood meant he'd already decided and was just waiting for the world to catch up. Same time Monday, I said. 8:58, he agreed. I'll bring the Department 6 projections. I'll have coffee ready. I stepped back. His hand fell from my waist slowly, fingers trailing like he was in no rush to let go even though he was letting go. I turned toward the subway steps. Caleb. I looked back. He stood there, hands now in his pockets, completely composed, the city moving around him like he was the still point of it. For what it's worth, he said quietly. Your mother would be proud of you. Anyone paying attention can see that. My throat tightened so fast I couldn't answer, so I just nodded. Then I went down the steps into the warm rush of the subway, a smile on my face I couldn't have hidden even if I wanted to. Up on the street, I was almost certain Ethan Voss stood on that corner until I was completely gone. It was exactly the kind of thing he would do, and I loved him for it. Already, quietly, in the way that snuck up on you before you had a chance to be sensible about it. I pulled out my phone on the platform. One text from him, sent 30 seconds ago. Monday feels too far away. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, don't be unprofessional about it. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, too late. I laughed out loud on the subway platform like a complete fool, and I did not care even a little bit.